Hello, hello.
Hey guys.
Good evening, good morning, good day.
Good day.
How are we all doing? We all good?
Yes. How are you doing?
Not too bad.
Aren't we moving it to the stage so we cannot talk over each other?
So there was the consideration. I can move it to the stage if we want, but it just felt like the event voice channel would be better for like generalized community engagement. But it's entirely up to you guys.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess we can stick with this model.
Yeah, if there's any problems, then we can sort of mute anybody who's being unruly.
Okay.
But it should be easier for people to sort of like generally chime in with questions and things like that if they have any. Make it a bit more of an open panel discussion.
Yeah. I have quick slides.
Okay.
Just share it before more people join.
Beautiful slides.
Yeah, created by Ed. Should we dive into it or wait for more people to join?
I think we can start. There'll be the recording as well anyway.
All right. So, just mute here. All right. So let's go over the global stake update and what has changed. So some results. We're third week in, if I calculated correctly. And already over 60% of emissions are getting recycled. That means that we're delaying the halving, so less tokens are getting into the circulation. I think yesterday 92,000 tokens were emitted, so the 250,000 is the baseline, so we're like 65% reduced together with the treasury. That is, so 4% of emission are flowing to the treasury. We'll expand more on the treasury purpose further down the slide. We've expanded the consensus security, so that means that on every larger subnet now, last time I checked, we have over 50 million stake on every subnet. Before the local stake, that was about 10 to 20 million maximum. I think that was on Market Compass, so we can certainly see that the validators are engaging. Then there's increased subnet scalability. So that means that instead of having the last limitation of 20 subnets, we're now increasing to potentially hundreds or even thousands. But our subnet pricing limits us to go to really high numbers, but the potential is there. Okay, so now some of the things that we have to focus on after the global stake. We have to check the subnets and we have to evaluate them regularly to make sure that the subnet pricing is according to the output of the subnet owners and to the validation model. We also need to stabilize the validation landscape. We'll go further down into the problems that we're facing right now with the global stake. One of them being weight copying. But I'll go into that later. Right now, probably I think it's going to be today, maybe tomorrow. We're about to release the commune-ai validator that is 100% going to be doing legitimate validation on all subnets. No weight copying. So you can support us, but we will make further announcements on our Twitter. And then we have a scheduled runtime update, and we were sending the announcement to the Discord yesterday. Basically, there are some cosmetic issues that we're facing, like the delegation fee that has to be united. Because right now, if you're a validator and you have a delegation fee, let's say at 20%, and you want to get it down to the minimum of 5, you need to go subnet by subnet, so send like 20 calls to the blockchain. So instead of doing this, because in the end, all validators want to have the delegation fee united. We're just going to unite it, so it's much easier. Then another problem, we've changed the registration logic a bit, so validators don't have it that easy to get deregistered like they had before. But this is presenting a bit of an issue because what's happening is that just a lot of validators are registering onto subnets and they're actually not validating there. So in the end, they're just taking up some spots, which is certainly not good for some subnet models. So we're going to change this. There's still going to be this kind of inherent immunity for validators, but the subnet owner can limit how many validators this can encapsulate. So instead of having potentially unlimited amount of validators that this model can take, it's editable by the subnet owner. So right now there shouldn't be any issue with that. And we also made some changes on the pruning score. So validators need to prove larger dividends that they had before. So they have like the pruning score is like the primary factor in the registration logic. And it was the same for miners and validators, but since the validators were spamming the subnets so much, so there wasn't any place for miners, or we see this issue on subnets that have lower max allowed modules. We had to do something even with this pruning score calculation. So right now the dividends in the registrations don't play as significant role as the incentives. All right, so. Now the problems that we're dealing with. So primary problem that even BitTensor has, and that's kind of in the nature of the transparency of the blockchain, is weight copying. So this means that instead of running a validator that would potentially need to run on many GPU servers and that requires constant updates, what's just easier to do, because all of the storages in blockchain, like this is just the nature of it, are transparent. So you don't have to run an actual validator, but what you can do is just copy weights of other validators. And I mean, this is not that big of an issue if majority of the validators are still honest, because at that point it's just strengthening the consensus. If you're copying weights of an honest validator, you're not damaging the subnet model as much as if you're just doing other types of weight copying, which would primarily be like setting weights on the best miners or things like that, just so you get the validator rewards, but you actually don't perform any validation.
At the same time, you're also sort of like not actually contributing to development, right? Because
Yes, exactly.
You're having power over who gets what, but you're not actually, contributing in a meaningful way in the, I guess, assessment of who's providing good work, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Like, for example, on Synthea or like plenty of other subnets, the model is that validators also contribute to, for example, the synthetic data set, or they forward the miner responses over to some server, and they can kind of contribute within the overall model, and the subnet owners should be thinking about it with their design. But if there's just so many validators that are doing weight copying, then the potential of this validator output is significantly reduced, and the whole dynamic subnet owners need to consider, like, if they're counting that you're gonna have like 5 actual validators on your subnet, or 10 validators, or that all of the validators on the network that they see on other subnets are actually doing legitimate validation, and they're counting with that in their subnet model, then it can be really bad for such subnets. So it's a big issue, but we will be presenting actually a potential solution to weight copying that is going to be different from the approach of BitTensor, but still it's a bit of a work in progress, and since the issue is truly complex and you cannot really solve the transparency of the blockchain, I would say that we would have a dedicated call once the paper is released and potentially the proposal. But so that's one issue of the current landscape, and another issue is that we have increased validation requirements. So this comes together with the weight copying, because if you have increased validation requirement and you need to, like I said, for example, rent some GPU server, your cost is going up, and some smaller validators that could do legitimate validation within the local stake model currently cannot do validation because they just don't have the funds, or they don't have the time, or they don't have the expertise to deal with debugging or potential debugging of certain subnets. So the requirements for running an actual validator go up by a lot, because if you had one subnet and now you have 20 subnets that you have to validate on, it's something completely different.
Yeah.
And that's
Oh, I think you cut out briefly.
I would say that although there are some problems, we're working to maximize the validator comfort. We're going to be releasing the auto update feature, and we're also going to do reviews of each subnet and trying to debug subnet owners their validation code. So validators should have a very easy time of running the validation, and they shouldn't go through some kind of debugging where the subnet code is just not working for them, or something of that nature. Okay, so what is coming? So today there's going to be runtime update in 2 hours, solving some of these issues with the global stake. Overall, I would say that the global stake update went very smooth, considering the size. Probably 30 or 40% of the entire code base in the blockchain changed, but we didn't have any major issues, and we're 3 weeks into the update, so I would consider the update overall success. But there's still some things that we should change, so that's coming in those 2 hours. Then we're going to get subnet 2 back up. So the subnet that was previously subnet 0, the commune subnet with the linear consensus that has a different consensus from all of the other subnets, currently is inactive on emissions, as we encourage all validators not to set their rootnet weights on it, as there's not much of a development going on. But we aim to give more into this module paradigm and get the subnet back up running, because we think that the idea is really cool. It's something that if for example a builder doesn't have the expertise to build a whole consensus into a subnet logic, and they just want to get a module, for example, it can be a game with in-game currency of commune, or it's going to be some kind of system that's going to track down tweets about commune, and then it's going to pay the person that has the most liked tweet, or something of that nature.
Yeah.
That you cannot really build subnet around. It's really suitable for the subnet 2, and it was the whole initial idea of it. Maybe Sal can go deeper into this, but we think that it's really good to get it back up, and we're going to even reveal a new front end that's in the next slide. And
Okay.
we just hope to get the modules back on commune.
So before we sort of move on to some of the other stuff, obviously there were expectations, a lot of expectations with like coming into the global stake update. Do you feel like that it's met those expectations to the extent that we wanted it to?
Yes, well, it's definitely with any large update, when you implement it, it can have some breaking changes, and it can make people kind of uncomfortable in the short term. But in the long term, if we wouldn't have done this, we can scale the subnet count further. We wouldn't have the consensus. We wouldn't have the potential consensus security. There would be a lot of issues that and also there wouldn't be such flexibility in pricing the subnets. That was a big problem, that subnets that didn't really deserve the emission were, for example, getting the emission. So the current subnet pricing and the subnet pricing that we can build on top of this model is much more powerful. So I would say that the thing that I would focus on the most right now, and in consideration of the update, is whether the subnet pricing is working. And I would say that, at least for me, the subnet pricing seems to be working pretty good. A lot of people were saying that, oh look, there are so many malicious actors. Like, you're never recycle the 50% of emissions. Let's just cut it, hard code it. Like, there was the proposal on it. But turns out that we actually exceeded the expectations, and instead of recycling, like, for example, 50%, we're recycling 60% of the emission, which I think that in the current in the current environment, where we're still developing so many of the essential tooling, and we're solving so many issues. It's certainly good that we're not having the full emission flow, because I think that in the future there's going to be the landscape is going to be even much stronger, and emissions can be allocated much better. So I would say that it fulfilled my expectations. If someone might be frustrated, for example, that the validation is kind of fuzzy now, or that I don't know, that there's a lot of weight copying, we are aware of all of it. But overall, if we wouldn't have done the update, commune really couldn't move on and expand as much as it can in the future. So just bear with us, and you'll see that it was the right decision.
And these concerns are all things as well that can be changed over time, with people being more involved, the community being more involved, and the community being active contributors of where they decide to place their stake, right? Who they decide to entrust it with. So the community actually, if anything, has significantly more control now, because they will have direct impact on which validators they choose to support. But do you feel like there could potentially be benefit to having a lot more communication from validators in terms of why they're supporting, who they're supporting, and ensuring that communication is kept up?
Yes, 100%. It's really important. If you want the subnet pricing to be efficient, or if you're not satisfied with the emission some subnet is getting, you have to speak out, because there's just quite a lot of subnets for few people to keep track of, and it's just not feasible to see that, for example, this subnet has improved or completely rebuilt their validation model, and their emissions are still so low. Like, validators certainly should comment on why they are setting such emission or such weight on some subnets, or subnet owners should definitely keep validators updated on any changes they're making, and why their weights should support them, because that's how this subnet pricing can increase in its efficiency. It's all about communication.
Yeah, making sure that those who deserve the emissions are getting them, but people can't make that decision if they're not informed as to the updates that are being made or development that's occurring.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I mean, if anybody else has any questions regarding specifically like the global stake and what's happened in this 3-week period, like Hansa said, it has been volatile, as with any large scope update on a chain this significant. Then by all means, this is the time to sort of air them out. But things seem to be settling down, and as Hansa said, around, I think you mentioned, roughly 65% of emissions are being recycled as of right now.
Yes, they are not going. They are not getting emitted into subnet owners or validators or miners.
And then presumably the idea is going to be that over time, the amount that's recycled is going to be reduced as more and more meaningful subnets begin producing like quality services or resources or something of the like.
Yes, exactly. We see commune expanding much further than this, and getting much bigger in the future, and we see that the spirit of time has, I would even say, for like a very generous emission in comparison to the amount of subnets and building that's happening. I mean, we have to always price in the like all of the factors, like whether new subnets are still having the interest of coming in, but the price action, a lot of things in consideration whether to recycle those emissions or not. But if we feel like there's going to be much more development in the future, and I'm pretty certain in that, then I think this is the right thing to do, and I would even be for recycling more emission, but I think that I'm pretty satisfied with the current subnet pricing, I must
Yeah.
say.
Okay. I mean, that's definitely good. That should give people a lot of faith, I think. But
Yep.
no, okay. It seems like we're good to move on to sort of what you guys are looking at in the future, unless Fam has anything that he wanted to mention.
All right.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So I guess how do we perceive like posts? Like, do you think this is a temporary solution? Because you've been obviously talking about, like I'm saying you as in I don't know, but it's like you've been mentioning like a future pricing mechanism. Um, and so how do you think that would, like, let's say, engage stakers? Because I guess like now it seems like the pricing mechanism is a bit more engaging because, like, a lot of validators are getting higher APRs the more they're participating across the network, which is good. And so those tend to attract stakers, as opposed to before's model where APR was literally constant. But yeah, like I guess how do you think, like, why do you think we can't scale already? Like if we just unlifted it, it would probably create a lot of really, really low emission subnets. But I guess in terms of the utility of making a subnet, in terms of its actual like structure, it's very, very low cost. So like that reducing the barrier, like, does that, like, is that something that we can do maybe or make a proposal on? Or you like, yeah, when do you foresee reducing the barrier?
Uh,
Or yeah.
mhm. I mean, that's totally up to the community, right? Like, we can make a proposal anytime, but if you take a look right now, if the subnet limit is around 40, and we haven't filled even 20 spots, I guess that there's currently not much of a barrier. Like, Comstats shared this Excel sheet into the validators channel in the Discord, and you can see that a lot of subnets are actually having issues with their validation. So I would say that the in the future, there's certainly the rootnet is not the, at least from my view, is not the long-term solution there, and there needs to be adapted a different form of subnet pricing, potentially a form of subnet pricing that can handle unlimited amount of subnets, or like a really high amount of subnets. But as of the current barrier, like we haven't even taken up all of the subnet spots, so I really don't. I don't think there's that much of an barrier in terms of creating subnet and deploying it on commune. Whether you get the weights, that's a totally different story, because if you would have I don't know, like 100 subnets, there's certainly not enough activity and I would say sophistication in the community and especially the rootnet validators to give them the emissions they deserve. So the only solution for that would be a different form of subnet pricing, which we would certainly like to propose in the future. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I'm trying to think of like the future, like it seems like we're going in the direction of lower barriers, or it just seems like to me, like ironically to me, like just like my mining experience in general, both BitTensor and Commune, isn't the funnest, if I'm being honest. And so I think it's just because there's so many, like each subnet has their own schema in a way. They have their own way of doing it. And so it's like I could imagine someone trying to go to each of these subnets, trying to clone each repo, install the environment. Like there's a lot of steps to do, like let's say to mine multiple subnets. Like I'm trying to basically mine all the subnets at once. And I'm just noticing that each subnet is like slightly different. And like I don't think the barrier is as economic. I think it might be a technical barrier as well for a lot of people who are even like managing these subnets. Like it's just a very complicated thing to do. There's so many moving parts. But I think if we constrain certain things, like for instance, if we have only the person to create a score function and a generate function, where the score function scores the generate function, that's a Turing complete validation system. And you can like basically, I don't know, have like a epoch time, make sure you like save only the results that are queried in the last like 10 minutes or whatever. I don't know, like within the tempo time or the epoch time. But I guess my point being is that I'm curious if I guess that's what I've been working on. Just trying to like do that. But I've just noticed it's just really hard to do. So yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts on the technical barriers that may be imposed on like new entry people or even people that exist in the community already.
Yeah, I guess it's primarily like the subnet can really be anything that in the end sets face, right? So you're not really that constrained. It's just a matter of getting the architecture right. So if there are such subnets that have like a hard barrier of entry that I don't know, you would for example have to make a custom model for, then I guess it would be good if there's some kind of balance. So there's like subnet designs that are getting enough emissions that are really easy to join and mine on, but also like subnet designs that might be like more technical or more into the I don't know, like the side of like fine tuning something or I mean, I don't think that those subnets that we have right now are that technical to get on. Maybe it's more technical to get higher in the scoring board. So, for example, if you want to decrease your cost and maximize the efficiency of your output, then then you have to probably like be quite technical, but. I mean, it all depends, but ultimately it's just the subnet architecture. Like you could make a subnet that's completely operated from some front end, and you wouldn't even have to have people. I guess like touching the terminal. You know, it's just a matter of someone building it. I don't think we are completely constrained into making subnets that have higher technical barrier of entry. Like I think it's very flexible. I mean, if you have some ideas on how to make the barrier of entry like less technical, then I guess it would be good to hear them. But I think it's primarily a subnet architecture design decision.
You mentioned, Fam, that
I'm
your
so sorry. That
experience with
makes
the
sense.
mining hadn't been like the most fun. Is that in relation to like the lack of competitiveness, or?
Sorry. What do you think of another question? Sorry. I've noticed that like, how do you envision the front end of all these subnet? Like, do you think each subnet should have its own front end, or do you think we should, or like, push each subnet or find a way to incentivize each subnet to create their own app? It seems like every subnet is like the subnet's more of a back end layer for the most part, and um like I guess the difficulty I'm finding is sometimes is that like subnets in general that like there's just like there's no application layer for people to just use this subnet. It's usually constrained to the validators. So I guess like
Yeah.
is there any like yeah, like I guess that's something else I've been trying to focus on too. Like I call them like module apps, where each like module is like basically it's like if it's a server, then the app is just the front end to that server. So like I guess you can have a subnet apps, which I guess basically are module apps, but with a replaceable backend technically. So yeah, I don't know. Like I've been. How do you think of like do you think we should encourage people to create their own apps, or do you think we should like even having access? Like maybe we should like create like an app store. Which is what I've been trying to like organize as well. But yeah, like what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly do that. Ultimately, it's the question to the validators that have the stake on rootnet, because those are the ones that are pricing the subnets in the current subnet pricing model. We could, if you want to encourage this type of subnet building and architecture, I guess what like the maximum we can do is organize the validators on the rootnet if we're not going outside of the current subnet pricing. So something that we would probably do in the future is just to tell them, okay, I think that what commune needs right now are subnets that have like a good front end and are having like reaction with the user, and we just don't have many of them. And I have a guy here that is building the subnet, or I'm building the subnet. I think it would be really good if you set your rootnet weight on it, because ultimately, like, we cannot really change what weight the validators give the subnets. Like you just kind of have to speak out to the community and to the biggest validators to set the weight there.
Yeah, that makes
Like if you want to encourage it within the architecture of the blockchain itself, the only solution for that is subnet pricing that has this as one of its requirements, essentially. But yeah, that's probably the most we can do with it. And yeah, another thing, if it doesn't really need to be, we have that here. If it doesn't really need to be subnet, what we can do, I guess I'll skip that slide and then go back to it. What we can do, or what we're going to be like releasing, is this like interact with modules created by the community. Is going to be like a front end for validation on subnet 2, previous subnet 0, so the subnet that has a different consensus, the linear consensus. So what you can do is you go here, and all of the subnets that were accepted by the DAO, if we go to the current governance page, you can see that there's this button, subnet 0 applications. We're going to, by the way, redesign the whole proposal page. That's in another slide. But those modules that are going to be whitelisted there, you'll see in this front end, and you can set the weight on them, you can interact with them, you can view what they do, you can even delegate on them, although the delegation paradigm is kind of changed with this global stake. But essentially, all of these ideas that don't need the whole consensus and the validation and this mining landscape, and are just something that's more of an off-chain thing. And for example, it can have like a user interface. You can really put anything there. They're going to be here. It's going to be all in one place. And the way it works is that our validator, the commune-ai validator that's going to be connected to this, is going to weight the votes from the users on this page, and is going to set the weights on these modules according to the user. So for example, if user has 10% of its stake of the commune-ai validator stake, then he has 10% power over the weight setting of this front end. So the whole community can kind of contribute on the pricing of the modules on subnet too. So if you have like some interface or something that just helps the community to manage stuff on commune, you can probably like make an application on the subnet too, and if the DAO picks you, you'll get registered here, and yeah, that's how the mining landscape will work on the subnet too.
Yeah, I've also been building an application. Maybe I think what we can do is maybe every Thursday or Friday, we have people showcase applications, and then like either we can use the treasury or like I don't know, I'll use my own tokens to like have like a bounty every like this doesn't have to be this could be I guess this could also tie with in with like subnet 0 or sorry, subnet 2 now. Like where each week, I feel like if we time this like to be naturally like have a natural tempo, like every Friday or Thursday is when the votes are counted or when like things are like kind of started, and then like a week it's kind of like every week people get a chance to make something and, to show like to basically show the DAO or to show at any time, and then kind of like maybe it's just like a weekly tempo, if that makes that like finishes on like I don't know like Thursday 12 a.m. UTC timer or it's Friday 12 a.m. UTC time or something like that.
Yeah.
And like I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I feel like that would be really like naturally because I feel like these tempos don't necessarily like if we want to do it project based, like we want to have it like a work like a year like fucking like if you're working on a salary, it's like 9 to 5. So we don't want to like have the votes on Monday because then people are going to work on the weekend. Ideally, I feel like having the votes being counted on like Friday, and then emissions distributed, and then doing that every week. Like I feel like if we did this, like for subnet 0, my problem during the earlier stages is that I didn't do it this way. It's probably required a bit more of a design, but yeah, like I basically had it too much like the bit tensor model with a smaller tempo. But if we had like a longer tempo, at least for these utilities, like I think that might give us a stronger signal too in the weights as well. I don't know.
Yeah, you mean putting like a longer tempo on the entire subnet too?
Like just having the tempo time at like let's say if because you have to change the tempo at the point at which you want to sync, let's say once a week. So if I want it to have like the tempo count the votes every at Friday, let's say at Friday UTC 12 a.m. or like at 0 time, right? UTC on a Friday every Friday. So I would have to change the tempo on Friday, and then it's kind of like fixing a clock or fixing a watch. There's going to be some lag or stagnation, so you're going to have to like adjust it every like maybe like few months, or it's going to be off by like a few seconds or a few minutes. But like it's the point of doing this is to essentially have it so that or I don't know, like maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe it's good to have a small tempo, but I'm just saying like every week like projects are being like utilized or like proposed, and
Yeah.
I think having a weekly tempo would be interesting for like application based subnet.
Yeah. I mean, what's even possible is to just register a module and describe like the whole system of it, and then all of the rewards that it makes, like you can make an off-chain script that distributes it based on some logic, in this kind of weekly tempo, period. So you'll just like register module and the subnet tool. You'll say what it does, like you'll describe how it works, and then we'll make some off-chain logic that will distribute all of its rewards that it makes. I know it's kind of trust-based, but I mean it would work, and it just does this without creating another subnet or adjusting the tempo of the entire subnet. But I guess it's a interesting idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it would change much in terms of the front end because you're basically just voting based on the usage, which I think, yeah, I think that's like I've been thinking about that before, but I just didn't know how exactly you could do that. Like maybe I was thinking one way of doing it is if you have like let's say if I sign the message that like let's say my inputs, which is kind of how Commune works right now. It's like I sign it, I send it to you, you then verify it, and then you run the call that I'm trying to call. Now I guess what it doesn't do yet is like, when there's no receipts. Like if we can create receipts, like we can have proof of interactions and we can basically create like these roll-ups where like I don't know, like you can bundle up all of your receipts, like all of your interactions with this client and then post them on chain to show that, oh yeah, this person called this model n times. And it like because they're roll-ups, like maybe you can like do some weird like off-chain bundles or something, but yeah, like I don't know, I think that might not be needed but I guess yeah, like yeah, I don't know. I'm just rambling. There's too many things. Yeah.
I mean, it'd be interesting if you can even like just connect it off chain to this model, at least in like a temporary period. If it works, then we can like somehow think about integrating it further. But I guess this doesn't have many limitations, like as long as it's off chain. But yeah, and the last slide that we have here is rebuild of the governance page. So the loading is going to be much faster. The look is going to be cleaner. You're going to have the opportunity or ability to propose changes, even for types of proposals that weren't possible on the previous front end, although it was in the blockchain. So, for example, transferring treasury funds. So you select an address that you want to transfer to, and you describe the reason, and then if the proposal reaches enough votes, then the transfer will get automatically executed. There's going to be a voters list, so you see who voted on each proposal, what keys and what stake. And there's going to be community comments, so you can open a proposal and there's going to be an entire discussion section with upvotes and downvotes. And we feel like we can release this new look of the governance page, I think next week, or I think it's going to be next week, early next week.
Do you think that there's a consideration that can be given to making it mandatory for validators to vote on governance updates?
Yeah, I mean,
And sorry, along those lines, do you also think that there might be proposals that validators in particular don't necessarily agree or disagree for? So with the implementation of the ability to abstain but still state that you have taken everything into account, still vote but say that I vote neither way, would that be a consideration for implementation?
Yeah, I think the abstain is interesting feature. We all of the governance redesigns, we should put like everything that's not directly associated. That's like a new feature has to pass through a proposal. So I guess the community would have to vote on it. Vote on it, like. But I think it could make sense because it can help with getting the proposal over the threshold, so it doesn't expire. So one of the sides can win, but you're staying kind of neutral. So I think that's a good point, and most governance systems have it in crypto. So it's something that people are used to. So I would say that it would be good to add. And your another question was that we could consider making the participation for validators mandatory. All right.
I just think if we're going to sort of like try and push the idea that validators are the ones who, in large, sort of dictate things that happen on the chain, because many people delegate their power, that they should sort of have a level of responsibility that they are forced to uphold, I think.
Yes. Well, what's going to happen if the validator doesn't take either side? Is he going to automatically abstain, or is he going to lose some kind of stake, or what's going to be the form of punishment if he doesn't take any action in the interval that the proposal is up?
I suppose that would be part of the question. Yeah, there's something potentially to solve on that end, but I think at least from a community perspective, in the interim, while potentially a more concrete solution is put in place, that like at least heavily encouraging that kind of behavior, I think is important, especially also from a community perspective. If you are staking with a validator that isn't actively engaging in the betterment of the protocol,
Mhm.
it would be very
Yes.
incentivized for them to move their stake to a validator that maybe has similar logic or
Uh,
similar
Yes,
perspectives, but actually engages.
I agree. I think that as long as we solve the question, what's going to happen if he doesn't cast his vote, then it can make. I think it makes sense at that point. There's already the proposal rewards that are implemented. We just. Oh yeah, I think I forgot to mention that the new front end will have more information about the proposal rewards. So before there wasn't any information on that. Now it's going to be more clear. So there's already kind of a the rewards are very small. Like they are just 10,000 across everyone that voted. Which is and there's even a decline if there's going to be like a lot of proposals in a certain period that the rewards go down, but that never happened.
Could there
So
potentially be a, sorry to cut you off, could there potentially be an alternate system where when there aren't proposals that it accrues over time?
yeah. Mm,
Because I mean, it would also depend, I suppose, on the magnitude or significance of the proposal, right? When you have these huge major proposals that are going to make like blockchain defining implementations, that they aren't going to come across very often, and so finding a way to incentivize active participation in that by having some form of accruing or stacking up reward that would occur. So obviously
oh yeah.
things like implementing a cap or something would be a good idea, but you know, if there's reduced emissions, if there's a lot of proposals, maybe increased emission or reward when there aren't very many, because these changes are obviously going to be very significant,
Yeah.
might be
I think
beneficial.
that we could allocate a larger part of the treasury for governance participation. I think that would already um, be something good, and especially if there's front end, so people see that they actually get rewarded if they cast their vote. Then I think that would already solve a major part of it. And if validator can gain a larger part of the, because the rewards are based on the stake from, so the delegated stake and not the stake that you actually own. At least I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's the case. So
Yep.
it already creates a larger incentive for the validators to participate because they have stake that's not theirs, but they have the responsibility and they are large. They are being incentivized to make a decision on the governance processes. And also, I think that if the voters won't see them um, in the sort of voters list that's going to be there, they can try to call them out or ask what's going on, or
Yeah.
perhaps unstake from them.
Could there be an additional section in the voters list that specifically holds the validators, do you think? Because
Yes,
you
we
don't
should.
have to stake from a validator, right? You can just stake from like your stake that you're controlled. It comes from yourself. So the
Yeah.
validator IDs are obviously not that there's not hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them. So
Yes.
having a
Yes.
separate section for like validators and having every validator on that list might also play into that, you know, level of responsibility that they should be forced to take.
Yeah. We could separate that. It's not really hard to do that. So yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Mm. But no, I mean, this looks incredible. I think improving the governance and again, incentivizing even further active participation, not only in governance, but also in controlling where people stake and which validators are being given sort of control over the system is very important.
Yep. No, agreed.
But if anybody has any questions, by all means, fire them away. This is your chance to get any information if you're looking for any. But otherwise, I think we've covered more or less everything. As Hunter has said, we even exceeded a lot of people's expectations, and there were many doubts about even being able to get roughly 50% of emissions recycled, and we're looking at, you know, sort of 30% beyond even that in the 60 to 65% range.
Yep.
So at least from the perspective of Honda and the commune-ai team, it seems like it's been a resounding success, at least in that capacity.
If someone has questions regarding the global stake, or they feel like something is not really that stable, feel free to ask.
But otherwise, it looks like there was a very rocky start, obviously, as there always is with large-scale updates in systems that are as sensitive as these. But everything does appear to have settled down a lot.
Yep. So I would say that with the global stake update and all of the previous updates that we've been taking, like the incentives update that has put the UMA consensus on majority of our subnets, we've been aiming to increase the emission distribution efficiency. So there's basically like you have to do some kind of computation that's beneficial for the network or moving the system forward in order to get the emission. And we, for example, that's been the case with pretty much every major update that, like, outside of the governance ones that we've been carrying out. So right now with the global stake update, we have kind of catched up on BitTensor's incentive landscape, or at least the level of robustness of our of commune is definitely not less significant or much less significant than BitTensor's. So I think that's a pretty good accomplishment. The downside of that is that we have came a bit closer in the looks and the overall works of the system.
The mechanisms and such.
Yes, the mechanisms. It was primarily because if you have emission distribution that's not desired, and you have solution that's proven to work, and the system that from a blockchain that's also doing incentive driven coordination is proven to work, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, because many of these ideas are kind of thinking from first principles.
Yeah, when you make a new car, you don't reinvent the wheel, as you said, right? You take the parts that are established to already work in a correct and optimal way, and then you change the other parts of the way that the system works as a whole.
Yes, exactly. But so I would say that we've closed like this chapter that was primarily dedicated to the emission distribution potential. And right now it's going to be mainly stabilizing that and innovating and making kind of a distinguishment for ourselves, and solving things that that are kind of pressuring the whole paradigm, like fate copying and similar, that BitTensor doesn't have a clear answer to neither.
No, well, I think that's great. It doesn't look like anybody else has anything that they want to question, but as always, if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to engage and ask those involved, because you'll find answers and clarifications. And if there's any large-scale issues that appear to have wide range of sentiment within the community, it's always possible to set up more of these meetings where we can have some of the prominent figures within the ecosystem come up and explain and talk. And especially now that a lot more responsibility is going to be on validators and subnets, communicate efficiently, you yourself getting involved is also going to be a huge benefit. So by all means do that. Otherwise, a huge thanks to everybody who came, and Honza for preparing everything that he managed to show off here, and for all of the work that's gone into the update in and of itself anyway. It's been obviously instrumental to the progressment of the train.
Yes. Great. Thank you for moderating. It was awesome.
No worries. Thank you as always, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Take care, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
See you guys.